You're listening to The Sacred Sofa, a podcast that explores all things theology and therapy. My name is Grace Brown. I'm a registered psychotherapist, certified Canadian counselor, and owner of Journey with Grace Counseling Services.
And I'm Brad Watson, pastor of Nexus Church and author of the book, A Path Called Compelling. Welcome to The Sacred Sofa. Sacred Sofa friends, fall is right around the corner now, and we will have all new episodes coming to you beginning on Thursday, September 12th. For now, we are giving you never heard before episodes we recorded prior to the launch of the Sacred Sofa.
In this episode, we begin the final series of the summer, and it is all about how to survive the speed of our modern age of technology. This is an episode we are calling The Cult of Speed. Enjoy.
Well, this morning's podcast represents a bit of a shift for us. I've been talking about tensions we experience with God, theological in nature, but we're going to shift focus here to tensions we experience with ourselves. And this past Sunday, I talked about a German word. Now, I'm going to get skewered probably for my pronunciation, but I believe it is Zeitgenheit. People can let me know if I did that right. German word meaning time or hurry sickness. And my beginning assumption was that most people I meet today will tell me that they're busy, they're tired, everyone feels exhausted, weary, can't keep up, or is having trouble keeping up. And so I wanted to dive into how we experience time. And I sort of started with the story in the Gospels of the two sisters meeting with Jesus, Martha and Mary. And I've come to see this story as really sort of archetypal for our time. Martha, the older sister, she's living, of course, under patriarchal society. She's expected to do the bulk of the hosting, while her sister's just relaxing, listening to Jesus, having a great time. But Martha's internally torn up. She's got hospitality expectations on her, patriarchal expectations on her. At the same time, she wants to be with her sister and the rest, listening to Jesus. And so Jesus remarks that she is worried and upset about many things. She's feeling the pressure. She can't keep up. And if there's any story I think that resonates with our time, it might be this one. We are all Martha to varying degrees today, having trouble keeping up, getting things done, living into the expectations. And so that was the crux of what I wanted to name, that this is what we're all experiencing right now to one degree or another, a time sickness. And then I don't know if you want to jump in there, but then I sort of named three things that are contributing to that, but we can get to that in a moment. Does that time sickness, does that resonate with you at all there, Grace?
Brad. We are in November. Those of us who follow the Jesus path are going to be celebrating Christmas.
Yes.
I haven't counted the days. When I do, my partner gives me a very strong side eye. So I'm not going to do that.
Yes.
You might get roasted for the German word, but I'm going to get roasted for the timeline on this. But especially at this time of the year, I even personally feel like the treadmill has gone faster, with an incline. But the treadmill has gone faster, and it's just like, okay, I've got all of the extra things to do on top of my already busy to-do list.
Right.
And just like Martha, many people like myself, people who identify as women, are often expected to be gatekeepers of relationships, doing all the things for all the people with little to no focus on their own needs. Combine that with family expectations, church expectations, and all the areas that want and demand a piece, burnout is inevitable.
Yes.
Absolutely inevitable.
Yeah, and this one felt like most weeks I'm preaching to myself, but this fall, we've kind of come out of 2-3 years of COVID. Some of those times the pace of life was slower just by necessity, lockdowns, all that stuff. This fall for me, and it might be just a personal thing, feels like everything's just sped up, really hard to keep up, just a lot of things going on. And so it's feeling quite I'm feeling this time sickness myself. And, it's, I already want to jump on the women as gatekeepers, did you say, of calendars?
Of
Yeah,
relationship.
and we're experiencing that here. We just had something this past weekend where my partner Kristen, she's the one who always gets the texts from other parents like, "Hey, is your child available for play date?" And she was bemoaning out loud why I'm not in on those texts. And it wasn't sort of, "Hey, I opted out," but it really speaks to that idea that all of us are in this to some degree, but I do think others of us suffer and have more expectations placed on us than others. And that's certainly true in our home, that there seems to be who's the gatekeeper of the calendar and relationships, and the pressure that comes with that.
Absolutely. More and more reels and talks are coming out in terms of how to hold healthy boundaries, how to develop strategies in a family structure where people don't just assume that one person is going to have the particular role. When we talked about in our last podcast about belief systems, this is one I do a lot of. Many women come in and the first thing they say is, "I'm overwhelmed." And when I hear that word, I immediately move to boundaries. One, are you aware that you can have boundaries? Two, how do you set them and maintain them? There's a lot of self-reflection work on that. And many women express distress in terms of, working full-time or even part-time, managing the calendar, managing all of the moving parts. And there's this newer concept talking about the emotional labor. Saying to a partner, "Oh, can you prepare supper?" And by the time you answer all the questions about preparing supper, some women just will do it themselves. And then, of course, the treadmill speed up continues. And so, yes, this time, hurry, sickness is absolutely a thing for so many people.
I've talked about this before. It was actually an article back in, I think it was 2008. So this is a while ago, in Vanity Fair. It was around Barack Obama and his choice to always have the same lunch and always wear a certain type of suit. And he talked about that because he didn't want to face choice fatigue in his work. And that the more time and energy he had to spend on little decisions, what am I going to eat for lunch? What am I going to wear today? We only have so many good choices we can make in a day. And sometimes it's those little ones that add up and leave us weary. And I think for many of us, like you said, supper, dinner, lunch, whatever, that alone is enough to, well, what do you want to eat? I don't know. What are you feeling like? Well, there's this, we don't have this in the cupboard. There's all sorts of things that just add up and make us weary.
Absolutely. And you're going to talk later in the podcast about the marketing that is now coming up.
Absolutely.
In order to address that. For the good or ill, to be determined.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I don't want to be seen as a Luddite. I don't want to be anti-technology, but there's certainly concerns that I have. And I think it starts with naming some things. And so there's a social theorist today, Hartmut Rosa, identifies three things. So the predominant narrative of our culture is that we live in a cult of speed, you could say. And the sort of moral guideline is keep up and move fast. That's sort of the underlying tension that all of us experience. But he lays out three sort of things that contribute to us feeling like time is speeding up and we don't have enough time. And those three things are technological acceleration, the acceleration of social change, and the acceleration of the pace of life. So in terms of technological acceleration, I mean, this is sort of, I think we see this in a lot of our lives. Let's consider apps or our technology, our phones. He talks about decay rates, right, with technology. So I have this phone, it's already a year old. My hunch is 2 to 3 years I don't have this phone, because technology works on a lifespan of maybe 2 to 5 years. I don't know. Some people can maybe make it longer. I doubt it.
I like to make it longer. I don't like changing my phone. I don't like dealing with new apps. My children mock me. I was once shamed by a Bell technician with my phone, which was 2 years old at that time.
And that was considered a relic. Yeah, a little bit.
He looked at it and he just kind of shook his head and side-eyed me, and I thought, how rude.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the gift that Hartmut Rosa gives us is that, we have social decay, we have decay rates with our technology, but the assertion that he makes is that this actually has a moral claim to it. And that is that what is valued is what is quick and what is new. And so as our technology is constantly speeding up, we have to speed up. And the moral framework there is what is good, what is moral is what's new and what's fast. And when that starts to happen with our technology, that's just one aspect. So all three are interrelated, but we're learning from our phones. We're learning from our apps. And I think that's a real challenge for us living under the yoke, I would say, the yoke of a culture that says, be fast, hurry up, keep up. And I'm intrigued because I think one of the promises technology makes to us is, yes, things are speeding up, but we have apps to help with that. I talked about this on Sunday. I have come under the scourge of relying sometimes too heavily on Skip the Dishes and Uber Eats, right? Like, no time today to think about meals, so let's order in. I'm curious, in your work, does technology ever come up as a source of stress, or is it one of those things that's maybe unnamed?
Definitely comes up as a source of stress, although I do my best to help them use technology to their advantage rather than disadvantage. So, for example, in our earliest illustration, you and I talked about divvying up domestic chores. And, I encourage a shared calendar so everybody can be on the same page in terms of what the activities are that they're doing. Not only, seeing each other's world, digitally, or for those who like that big dry erase calendar, which is very useful, but also I use it as a tool to help them do an activity audit. It's like we're moving so fast sometimes we don't know all of the things that we're doing. And the other metaphor I use is, I said, you remember the carnival where they used to spin the plates? The person was spinning all the plates. I use that as a metaphor and say, okay, what all of the plates that are spinning right now? And I literally have them draw out the plate, and each plate has an identifier. Is it work? Is it family? Is it chores? Is it, and as they see the plates piling up, it's like, imagine you trying to spin each of those and keep them moving. And so it starts to take on a new viewpoint. It's like, no wonder I feel so hurried. No wonder I feel so overwhelmed. And so, yes, technology can also, the smartwatches, if I'm looking at clients and all of a sudden they get a message, you can see them automatically look. Like, we talk about all of those things and how they actually start to take away time rather than give you time.
Yeah, and one of the things I talked about on Sunday is the promise of technology, of course, is it can save you time, but what it ends up becoming, I believe, is the press to do actually more with your time. So I related on Sunday this story about just watching my kids at their swimming lessons being caught eating nachos and cheese, a bit of an embarrassing moment there by someone I know, but this big sign at the swimming pool saying, hey, scan our QR code, you can see the options available to you while your kids are in your program. And it was like, hey, while your kids swim, you could do a workout, and you could also join a book club. You get all these different options, and it seems like a great thing, and it might be in some ways, but I think the push of technology is that in 1 hour slot, I can watch my kid maybe in their swimming lesson, but also read 3 books on Blinkist or Headway, and I can get in an exercise and maybe meditation. And while that might seem like a great thing, it's pushing me into the realm of multitasking, and it's pushing me to not just see an hour of time as a unit for one thing, but for multiple things. And when we're forced to cram in so much into one chunk of time, that starts to take a toll on us.
Absolutely, it does. This concept of multitasking, it's probably been a year or so now. I remember catching a reel about a fellow who was challenging this idea of multitasking. And we use that word a lot in society. We've, bought into this, David Crenshaw would call a lie, the myth of multitasking, how to do it all and getting nothing done. By David Crenshaw. And so I've started reading the preview of this book because I'm intrigued. I believe that I also have been bamboozled to believe that I can be more effective. And statistics are actually supporting this myth of multitasking. 70% of workers admit they feel distracted when they're on the job. 16% would admit they're almost always distracted. Now think about if you've got a smartwatch, buzz, you look over, right? People coming into your office if you don't have the door closed. Emails, here's one. How many times do we check our emails on the computer or on our phone or our devices? The average number of minutes people take between checking their emails or instant messages is 6 minutes. So I don't do math well, but I was like, if you're checking at least 50 times over the course of your day, let's just say you've got 50 emails, 6 minutes each, that's 300 minutes. You've lost 5 hours just into checking emails.
Does that include replying, or this is just checking?
This is just checking.
My goodness. Yeah.
And so the term is actually more correctly identified as switch tasking. Because not only does statistics show that we're actually losing time in this myth of multitasking, but our brain actually can't move from one task to another task, efficiently. Whenever we switch to a task, our brain has to readjust. You ever have that experience where you're driving and you're looking for an address and then you find yourself turning down the radio?
Yes.
Our brain can't do both at the same time. So it's literally impossible for us to actually be multitasking. We've been hoodwinked. We've been bamboozled, Brad.
Oh, now we're getting to some good stuff here. I like this, Grace. First of all, that resonates. Whenever I'm in a sticky situation in traffic that I need concentration, boom, first thing, music goes down. You're right. I mean, that should be an indication to us. We can't concentrate on two things at once. And that's a pretty scary statistic there, because a lot of my work requires some flow time, immersed in writing, in reading, and thinking in a conversation like this. And it's simply impossible if I'm always distracted. But if that's true, that we're always like, I wonder if anyone's emailed me, or I need to check up on that, means that we're doing a lot of things probably really poorly, if at all, and not getting into any sort of flow or doing deep work. That seems problematic. And at the end of the day, then it just reinforces, oh my goodness, I didn't get enough done today. I did, more stress, more anxiety. Any more in this book seems like perhaps a necessary read for some of us. What are
it's a
any more
necessary
insights?
read. Sorry. I'm intrigued by it because, like myself, I'm human, right? And there's all the things that I want to do. But I absolutely believe that it's a necessary reflection for all of us to start taking, and not just trying to keep up with the Joneses in terms of speed and time. We can't do it all, and we pride ourselves in trying to do it. And I think we're increasing mental health challenges, physical health challenges, trying to do all of the things. The other metaphor I often use is in terms of what takes up our energy. So if you're looking around your office space there, Brad, in my office, I've got a lamp plugged in. It's a little cool. So I've got a heater plugged in, my laptop, my printer. All of these are good things. But at the end of the month, I'm going to get a bill from Innova Hydro. And it's going to tell me how much it costs me to have all of these things plugged in.
Right.
How much more powerful our own energy source. If we're doing all of the things for others, plus the things that are necessary and for ourselves, it's all going to come at a cost. And then
Right.
if we're not able to challenge societal messages about time, sickness, and hurrying and being productive, we're burning out at incredible rates.
Yeah.
Incredible rates.
Yeah, and so the acceleration of technology is one aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Hartmut raises two others, and again, it's not to say, and I think this is where it can get tricky. The other two are the pace of social change and the pace of life, and it's not to say that technology is wrong or that the social changes that we've made are wrong. That just that in combination together, these three things are making us tired. I had a good reminder of this on Sunday because I talked about the pace of social change, and I referenced The Office, right? So this, a lot of people love The Office, great sitcom. I think it ran from 2005 2013, but that how it couldn't be rebooted today because some of the humor is outdated. It wouldn't fly today. And how so many of our shows, Stranger Things makes us nostalgic for the 80s. And, The Office makes us nostalgic for the early 2000s, which is not that long ago, right? Like that is really not, it's funny to be nostalgic for something that was like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody reminded me after the sermon that for everyone, it was not everyone experienced the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s as great, that some social change has made life better for people now. And I completely agree with that. But I think that there's an element that when you take the pace of social change and add it to these two other elements, it's just one of those things that contributes to us being tired. And, that idea that what's fast and new is what's good. What's at the forefront of social change is what's good. And it makes some people, I think, feel lonely, tired, like they've been left behind. And you combine that with, hey, I've been left behind by technology, or I can't keep up, and it contributes to this thing. But it did leave me wondering, how do we embrace some of the positives social change brings us, while recognizing that its speed might be contributing to our time sickness, so to speak?
I think one of the things that just occurs to me is often in society, there's this either or mentality at play under the surface. Sometimes it's covert, sometimes it's overt. You're talking about what is new is what is best. We have to start to embrace both and. There could be technological and other advances that, help us, but we have to accept that some of them can also bring challenges. There can be benefits and challenges. It doesn't have to be either or. And, I've used this example with clients, even the good things could invoke stress. Recently you just supported a really good friend getting married, right? What an incredibly joyful occasion. Do we want to talk about the stress in getting there? I think some became sermon illustrations.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. And, it's interesting because I remember years ago, somebody saying to me, I was remarking about how the church I was at the time, everyone was tired from this collective thing we're doing. And someone remarked to me, some things are worth getting tired over. And that's always stuck with me. Something, okay, celebrating a good friend getting married, and okay, I got to travel for 3 hours and it's a weekend away and all that stuff. So some things are worth getting tired over. I think for many of us, what we're having trouble with is maybe differentiating, going back to your plate analogy. And I'm curious where you go with this, because for me, I wonder if there's a time where you go, you know what? Some of these plates are worth spinning more than others, and some of these I might need to let fall.
Yes.
And there's guilty feelings with that. There's ramifications. There could be relational ramifications with this. How do we arrive at a place where we know or have a good idea, okay, here's the important things to keep spinning. The rest I might have to risk disappointing others over.
First step is identifying. So when I ask them to draw the plates, it's, every client that I've worked with this far, as you can see their eyes starting to widen. as they draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plates. And it's like,
Right.
oh, wow, I'm really realizing how many plates that I have and that I need to keep spinning. And then part two is, as you said, is to start to decipher which one of these plates are still necessary, which are wants, which are what might be nice to have. And then we talk about whenever we set a new boundary, there's going to be resistance. Sometimes it's internal, feeling guilty, maybe I shouldn't, am I being selfish? Often it's external when you talk about impacting relationships. What do you mean I can't play soccer next season? Right? You're going to have to deal with the ramifications of making this different choice, for hopefully the greater good. I didn't use this metaphor. I don't know where it began, but I definitely use it in my practice. The question is, how do you fill a jar with rocks, pebbles, and sand? The answer is start with the rocks. The rocks are the needs. These are the things that must go on in my life. The pebbles are those other things. And then the sand are the extras. And using that same metaphor, it's like it helps you identify what are the things that I need to start with first. Right. And sometimes we identify as sand things that are more should be a rock and vice versa. And so just helping to identify where am I prioritizing my time is super important. It will eliminate this misconception of multitasking. And more than that, we're going to be more present with the things that we want to do. If you want to be more present while your child is playing sports, then don't download the app and do a fitness workout. Watch your child play the sport.
And it's one of the things I've been thinking about is for some of us going through deconstructing maybe Christian faith is, one of the key areas for people is like so much of this was guilt inducing, right? And we're going, okay, let's find a faith that actually is compelling and life-giving rather than guilt-driven. And I think when we name our age as the cult of speed, that it has a religious mindset as well, keep up, move fast. I think it's important for us to deconstruct the many guilty feelings that come in living in the cult of speed and how hard it is to break away from that, whether it's, oh my goodness, I'm going to disappoint my child, or I'm going to disappoint a friend or even family because I can't be around as much, whatever that is. But just honestly acknowledging that in order to find some sort of balance and health with our relationship with time, it's going to mean disappointing people and it's going to mean feelings of guilt. And that's never easy. But I think if you, again, like you said, you start with the rocks, what you value, naming that at least gives us a path forward. Doesn't make it any easier disappointing people or ourselves, but at least gives us a path forward.
It does give us a path forward, and most folks are respectful of boundaries. It's not often that I work with clients who find that once they've set the boundary, it's the relationship is completely broken. Most folks have enough people in their circle who actually understand and appreciate the boundary and respect it. And then they actually join with, you ever have this experience where, I don't know, you're feeling vulnerable and you speak that out loud and someone joins you in the vulnerability? Most times that's what it's like. You know what? I'm really sorry. I've double booked myself on my calendar. Would it be okay if we move to another? Most people can understand that and respect that.
Right. And, I was thinking in my own life that some of the times where most comes up is not when I've made clear boundaries, but when I'm fuzzy. And it's like, well, maybe I can do that. And then maybe I back out last minute, or, it's like, okay, hey, if you were just straight up with us about your boundaries, that would have made things easier. And, trying to come to terms with sometimes my indecision, or maybe I'll do that. It comes from, again, those guilty, oh, if I say no, I'm going to disappoint someone. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's worse to wait down the road until you're, say, burnt out and go, I cannot make this appointment, this meeting, this engagement, because I just have nothing left in the tank. That waffling, I think, is worse for people than clear-cut boundaries, but it feels so hard to do.
And, it has to start somewhere.
Mm.
And, not only the activity audit I encourage, but a friendship audit, the relationship audit. It's like, who are the people in your world who are going to embrace, and respect your boundaries? Who are the people who tend to have that external resistance in a way that's disrespectful? Then you might, it calls all of it into question, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the third element, and we've already been talking about this, you've got technology, social change, but also the pace of life. And, one of the examples I mentioned is our inability to, when we go on holidays, leave an autoresponder that basically says, I'm gone. It's on you to try again, not on me. So often, nobody's ever told me specifically what my autoresponder needs to read, but there's this external pressure for it to say, hey, sorry, I'm away. So there's a boundary, but I'll get back to you when I get back from vacation. And one of the, I was reading some literature this week. One of the reasons so many people are hesitant actually to take time off and vacation is because of the hell they experience when they get back, and you've got an inbox with hundreds, thousands of emails. And it's like that first week back feels like just a wave of expectations. And I'm wondering, I'm not necessarily saying our autoresponders should say, nope, I'm not going to reply to any of these, but how do we make boundaries around the pace of life so that we're not caught in this frantic catch-up phase? I don't know if there's an answer for that one.
I would actually encourage the autoresponder.
Yeah, yes, yes.
And the reality, being vulnerable myself here in this moment, is I have experienced burnout. And so I've lived and understand that these things for me are no longer optional, because I don't want to go back to that feeling. Right. That complete compassion fatigue, that complete, I just don't have anything left in the tank for myself, much less anyone else. And many, many, many people, that sort of came to a head through the bulk of the COVID pandemic. And so I embrace things like autoresponder because it's digitally verbalizing a boundary that I have. In my schedule, I cut off my work at a certain time so that I can care for myself and those close to me. If I don't give that, everything I say yes to, I'm saying no to something else. And so when I identify my big rocks, those are the things that go in the calendar first. Right. And if there's room in a balanced way for extras, absolutely. Absolutely. So I actually encourage clients, put an autoresponder. If it's difficult for you to verbalize a boundary, start with the digital and then let that influence how you respond in terms of your calendar. Absolutely. This is where I again encourage technology to be. I know many people don't use it as much, but caller ID, that is a digital boundary.
Yeah.
You can look, see who's calling, and say, you know what? Do a self-check. I know this person is in distress? Do I have a full tank with which to help and support them in the best way possible? Then I need to defer. You cannot pick up the phone. I love turning off my phone, my work phone, when I go on vacation, because then I'm not tempted to see, what fire is burning that I need to attend to, because then that takes me out of where I currently want to be, sitting by the river, listening to the babbling brook.
Right.
We can't multitask. And so if we're not careful, we'll be switch tasking, which is going to take us away from the mindfulness of being present in that moment.
Yeah, that is, and it comes back again to a technology thing here. How many of us are operating? We don't have a work and home phone. We have a phone, and it functions for both work and home. And it's amazing to me even this summer, Kristen and I have often said that when we stay at home and don't travel, it feels like we're just spinning in the same world. So it feels good to get away, whether that's an hour up north or somewhere further. But what I noticed even this summer, and I need to do some thinking about it, is, I'm using my phone to travel, Google Maps, I got to drive here, whatever. But that also leaves on, okay, well, now I'm getting texts from home, and it's like, how do I explain? I'm on vacation. I don't want to reply right now. But all that guilty feeling is there going, I'm supposed to be disconnected, but this machine is keeping me connected in a way that I don't enjoy when it's supposed to be just about refueling. And I think you add all these things together, and I think it is a real recipe for burnout.
And, and I got to be clear that not everyone has the luxury of having a personal phone and a work phone. But right. I made that strategic choice and investment because I know what it feels like to have work messages coming in on my personal phone. I'm not digitally suave enough to figure out a way to disconnect those two things. If my, Jane platform is on my personal phone, I know myself enough that I'm going to look, and then I'm going to get pulled into whatever the case may be. And so the autoresponder I use at the end of my day, if I'm going to be away for an extended period of time. Even friendships, those who are in my inner circle, I'll say, okay, my partner and I are going away for the weekend. We'll catch you on the other side of it. My children, if it's an emergency, reach out. I'm verbalizing all these boundaries to protect that peace that I am actually in control of. Yeah. And so those in my inner circle, they understand. And many have been examples to me, or I'm examples to them, because ultimately most of us really want the same thing. And sometimes it takes one or two people to take the lead and say, you know what, that was very refreshing. Went away this weekend for my partner's birthday, and we made a commitment to each other. Yes, it's your birthday. Absolutely answer and message folks, respond to people who are wishing you greetings. Other than that, we're not on Facebook. We're not on all the Instagrams and all of the Snapchats and all of the things. And boy, was it amazing to just be in nature, be present with each other, chatting, all of those beautiful things that are so important in a relationship, not distracted by external forces. But that took commitment and intention throughout the weekend.
Right. Oh, there's a lot here. We've got 2 more weeks that I want to spend on this, so we'll maybe park it here for today. But I think this is a real pressing issue for a lot of people. Absolutely, something we need to talk about, deserve to be talking about for our own mental health and well-being. So that hopefully is a great little introduction, and we'll pick up more next week. But Grace, thank you for those insights. I think I'm walking away with some real weighty things here to think about. So thank you for that.
You're most welcome. I love what you do because I appreciate your vulnerability. I often am the same in my practice. We're humans at the end of the day, and we need each other. We need safe community. And that's going to look like so many different ways. You as a pastor, me as a therapist, but we're all humans, wanting to be better and do better. And being vulnerable in these safe spaces to share our learnings from the mistakes we've made, I think is so incredibly important. And I love that we're using this forum to support others in that way.
Awesome. Thanks, Grace. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, Brad.